Hi, and welcome to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I'm Dupe Witherick, alcohol free wellbeing and transformational coach, and the best selling author of A Cocktail of Clarity, How to Ditch Drinking, Embody a Joyful New Identity, and Thrive Alcohol Free. This podcast will show you that being alcohol-free is not what the traditional narrative says. And even though alcohol is so ingrained in our society that it is okay to give yourself permission to stop drinking if you want to. And you do not have to wait until you hit rock bottom. It is certainly not boring, and I believe ditching drinking is just the start to living an extraordinary life. By getting rid of this one thing, it allows the doors to open to endless possibilities and opportunities. Each week, we will have guests on who are at various stages of the alcohol-free journey, from those who are curious to those who have been alcohol-free for years. We will also have experts on talking about different topics relating to alcohol and beyond. Through these conversations, you will discover what it means to thrive alcohol-free. Enjoy. Hi, Suzy, and welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hi, Jupe. So lovely to be on here. I'm so excited for this conversation with you.
Oh, bless you. It's so great to have you here. And I think the reason that I invited you was because I did a powerful hypno breathwork session with you, which I loved. And I also loved hearing a bit about your story. And I thought it'd be great to have you on to talk about hypno breathwork, but probably really share your triumph over what was a really challenging time for you and how you've been thriving ever since. And so it's a great story that I know is going to encourage my listeners and anyone else who listens to this. And so I'm excited to have you here. But before we get into it all, why don't you, for people that might not know you, why don't you do a quick introduction in terms of who you are and what brings you to the podcast?
Yeah, I think let's go straight to the story because I think it really is going to share like what my deeper why is and to why I feel so passionate about bringing this work to the world, why I feel so passionate about helping people empower themselves and to remember our true essence is thriving and
Mm.
it is expansion. Yeah, I started on this journey, this healing journey back in 2012 when I actually got diagnosed with 4 cancerous tumors. And the doctors wanted to do such a horrific surgery on me that I just said no. I said no, I wasn't willing to have this surgery. It was a surgery that would have changed my whole life and who I felt about myself. And so I decided to pack in my job in the music industry and where I was living a bit of a wild child lifestyle. I decided to pack it in and just go embark on a healing journey. So that's when I started to discover the power of food, the power of nourishment, of fasting. I moved to a Buddhist healing center. I learned how to fast. I learned how to meditate. And I just really started delving into the world of biohacking before it was even called biohacking. Dave Asprey wasn't really a thing in those days yet. So I was already doing ozone saunas and vitamin C IVs and red lights. This was all back in 2012 to really heal my tumors. And what happened then? I could see what I was doing was working. So I just ignored all the doctor's letters, all the doctor's emails of like, why haven't you come for surgery? Where are you? You need to get on the surgery table. And I just carried on committed to my Chinese doctor, to the Gerson therapy. And then after 2 years, I was fully managed to heal 100% of my tumors. So then as we know with the universe, if we have a lesson but we don't fully listen to it, then it's going to remind us again of that lesson. So I healed my tumors. I had this whole new outlook on life, but then slowly but surely, I went back to my old ways of being, my drinking, partying. I was so deeply like that was my life for so many years beforehand. And then, of course, got another wake up reminder where I was in an accident where I had a traumatic brain injury and I was not able to get out of bed for 14 months. I couldn't walk properly, I couldn't talk properly, and I found myself in a dark room, not even being able to have people come and visit me because it was just too hard for me to hold a conversation. I couldn't look at a screen, I couldn't read, I couldn't open the curtains. Anything on my sensory system was too much. So luckily I had just discovered breath work. And so I was like, okay, if I'm here flat on my back in a dark room and all I can do is breathe, then I'm going to utilize it. So I just started doing breath work every single day, and it really has been such a big foundation to me healing and rebuilding my whole life. The doctors said I would never heal from my brain injury, that I would never be able to work again or travel again. And here I am running around the world, building my own business, just absolutely loving life. So it's so unbelievably powerful. And this is my why of what I do, why I wake up every day, is to remind people that we all have this power within us and it's right underneath our nose. And we don't often get told how powerful we are.
I mean, oh, bless you. It's unbelievable what you've gone through, and the fact that you have healed yourself twice is incredible. And thank you for sharing. So, I mean, I love what you said about we have the power within us. Breath work is just, it's a tool we all have access to. So many people don't, we breathe, but we don't breathe in too much
Mm.
point. But going back to, and we'll sort of get to that, but going back to your original story and saying that, if you don't learn the lesson, then it will come back again, is you said you went back to the lifestyle that you'd always known. And I think a lot of people do something, they change a habit, they get to a point, and then they go back to it. What do you think made you go back to, having had such, to join, to go to a Buddhist center and learn fasting and all about food and nourishment and really probably be quite healthy. You were probably at the top of your game. What made you then go back into drinking and partying and all of that before the brain injury, do you think?
I think it's because I hadn't reprogrammed my subconscious.
Mm,
The drinking and the partying, when we have these behaviors, it's keeping us safe from something.
mm,
So if I was turning to alcohol in those days, it was keeping me before I got diagnosed, it was keeping me safe. When I was 8 years old, I was sent away. I didn't grow up with my parents. I was sent to Czechoslovakia and I was sent to boarding schools. So from 8 years old, I learnt to look for love in all the wrong places, in food, in alcohol, in smoking, in narcotics. I was looking for love everywhere else. And what I realized was that, even though I learned all these new ways and I was able to heal my tumors and I was able to bring my body back into health, I was still hadn't changed this subconscious programming deep down that got me into that mess in the first place. So it was like, okay, I've got these new tools, but unless we actually reprogram our subconscious to come in alignment with our conscious actions, then we're always going to go back to repeating our same behaviors and patterns. that was why I ended up going back, because I still hadn't got to that deeper part of me, which needed love, which needed security, which needed to be seen. And so I chose those behaviors.
Mm. And so what changed after the brain injury and healing of that? What was it, just the breath work, or did you do that deep subconscious mind work as well? Because 95% of our behaviors and habits and daily actions are all based on our subconscious mind. And we underestimate that unless we change it, we can't really move forward. And so what was different after
Yeah.
after that?
Yeah. So breathwork really helped me. My original trainings in breathwork were holotropic and rebirthing. And what that those experience showed me was that I would have these big cathartic releases and trauma responses. And for sure, trauma releases, and for sure, it helped me release a lot of the PTSD and the trauma from my accident within my body as I was healing my brain. But it wasn't tangibly changing my life, apart from that I knew after every session I felt better and things had shifted, but I couldn't really tangibly say what exactly. And then it was actually an experience I had when I was healing my brain injury, where I was doing something called neurofeedback training. I was working with all these neuroscientists and doctors. And at one point, they had these straps and electrodes all around my head, and they were trying to get blood flow to my brain. Now, I had so much inflammation in my brain that I wasn't getting any blood flow. And the doctors had me, telling stories, counting numbers, trying to encourage blood flow to my brain, and nothing was getting blood flow. And luckily, my doctor was super open minded, and he was like, Suzy, do your breathing. And Jupe, within a second, I could see all these other parts of my brain lit up and blood flow moving. So I was like, wow, this is so unbelievably powerful. Within like a few seconds of doing this breath work, we can bypass our prefrontal cortex, our monkey mind, where most of us are stuck day in, day out in the repetitive thought loops, and we are able to access our subconscious mind, our limbic system, all these different brainwave states very quickly. So that was when I was like, wow, we have an opportunity here to rewire our subconscious. And that was when I found the HypnoBreathwork technique. And my teacher came into my life, Francesca Sitma, and I did a year-long mentorship with her. And then I did her training. And this is where we used breathwork to access our subconscious mind and these alternative brainwave states. And then we bring in hypnotherapy cues to rewire our subconscious. So now I have done the subconscious work to really give myself that love that I needed and to really come into real peace with where I am in life, peace and joy, and not needing things externally. For years, for example, I had a very fraught relationship with my mother, as you can imagine, being sent away at 8 years old. Through breathwork, I was totally able to transform that. We now have a relationship for the first time in my life because I'm not looking for love from her any longer. I've given it to myself so we can actually meet each other as two adults.
Yeah. And it is amazing how many people don't realize that they're looking for love. You say that, in a way that, um, I mean, that must be really special with your mum now that you've sort of forgiven her and you've moved on. But there are so many childhood traumas that people carry around. There's so many things that people don't even know, that they don't love themselves. Yeah, they use different mechanisms to cover it up or to hide it, or they have different go-tos to avoid it, avoid the emotions.
Yeah.
Um, so so with the hypno breath work, when you started, because you said you did a mentorship first, when you started going through that, what made you realize it was so powerful?
Sorry, what did you say before that?
With the hypno breath work, how did you realize it, or come to know that how powerful it was?
Yeah, I think it was because when I came to HypnoBreathwork, I was obviously already like a year and a half into my breathwork journey, but I was still a shell of myself. Having a brain injury, like it really, you lose your identity. I just looked in the mirror and I was like, who is this woman? I have no idea who this is anymore. I didn't recognize myself. I'd lost my short-term memory. I'd lost my focus. And, when you have a blow to your head, it also changes all your hormones. So I would go from like 0 to 100 within a second, which was not like me. So I would be like, who is this woman? And because of that, I just had no confidence. I had no self-worth. I was like a little bird. And then I started working with my mentor, and slowly but surely, I would be able to show up on camera a little bit. I would be able to speak my truth. It just started rebuilding who I was, and I could remember who I was and build a whole new self-identity because I didn't know who I was at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's awful what happened, obviously, but actually, identity is key, and being able to create this new identity that's fully built on who you are and who you aspired to be, I imagine that's quite a freeing thing as well. But I'm curious, with everything you've been through, a lot of people, if they've been through cancer and then they've been through a brain injury, they let it define them. They end up becoming a bit of a victim to it. And you have completely turned it around and thrived, and you are thriving. And I just wonder, what do you think the difference is between those people who, when they go through a hard time, just use it as an excuse for the rest of their life or for as long as they keep that victim mentality going on, versus you who, considering everything you've been through, I am just amazed that you are completely, you have created an identity and a life that really serves you, whereas it could have gone a very different way. So, what do you think inspired you to one, get out of that? You described being in a dark place and not being able to see anybody, and lots of people stay there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to, when you described it, the idea, changing the identity. I'm just curious as to what actually gave you that drive to move forward and redefine and create the new Suzy.
Yeah, great question. I think it's also, let's just not forget that for sure at some points I was fully in victim mentality.
Sure.
It's not sunshine and rainbows
Yeah.
on the healing journey. Hindsight is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But when I was in the depths of it, I was suicidal. I didn't want to live anymore. I was in such a dark place.
Mm.
So for sure, there were moments where it did define me. And people, even some of my mentors, I remember at one point I couldn't be on a screen for more than like an hour a day. So I started trying to work, a few years into my brain injury. I needed finances. I started trying to work, and, I just end up in vertigo nonstop. And even my mentors were being like, you're letting this story define you. I'm like, well, it's not actually just a story. I'm having physical symptoms. This is actually a physical injury. So, for sure, it took a lot of drive to be able to get out of that. But I think, Jupe, my reality was so dark, especially with a brain injury. People will always say to me, oh, the brain injury must have been so easy after healing 4 tumors. And I'm actually like, actually, it's the opposite. The brain injury is way worse because at least when I was healing my tumors, I had my mind to keep me on track. I could study, I could learn, I could talk to different teachers and, but with a brain injury, when your head feels like scrambled eggs and you can't remember anything, it is dark. So I think the reality I faced at that time was so dark. I was either like, either I'm gonna die and I don't want this reality and I just need to give up, or I'm going to really fight to get out of this reality because this is not a reality that I'm going to accept for myself. And I think it was that absolute determination of like, I am not willing to accept this reality I am in because it was so awful. That was my drive. I was just not willing. And I think because I had already healed my body when the doctors told me I couldn't, with my brain injury, when they told me I wasn't going to heal anymore, I was just like, I am not going to believe you because I've already defied the doctors. If I've defied them once, I can defy them twice. So I was not willing to have that reality. So the moment my brain started getting better, every time it was like 14 months before I could start reading. So I happened to have the book by the side of my bed, Tools of the Titans by, who is it by? Tim Ferriss. And I just opened it up one day on a random page and it said, oh, the hyperbaric oxygen is good for the brain. I was like, okay, found a hyperbaric oxygen chamber in London. But at that point, I still wasn't well enough to go very often. I could go once a week. That was the maximum I could go. And it was still a massive struggle for me to even get there once a week. But I started doing it. So I started going there once a week. I started feeling better. After every session, I started feeling better. Okay, as soon as I had the energy and the ability to go twice a week, I went twice a week. Then one of my friends said to me, oh, have you heard about stem cells? They're excellent for people with brain injury. Okay, now I'm going to start researching stem cells. I did my own stem cells. So honestly, it was just my absolute determination of not willing to accept the reality I was in because it was just too dark, that just kept spurring me on and on. And the more I started to get better, the more hope I had, and then the more that would drive me and to keep staying committed and disciplined to this. I had like such an immense healing routine. It was like from morning to night. I was like hyperbaric chamber, stem cells, red light. I was like intense, but I just stuck with it because honestly, Jupiter, I just couldn't live with the other option.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what you've said is really helpful for anyone who wants to change or do something different. When you make that choice that actually, no, I'm going to choose something different for me, I'm going to defy the odds, I'm actually, your subconscious then goes to work, doesn't it? It starts saying, okay, well, actually, let's see what we can do, because there's so many different realities, right? We could be living in all sorts of realities, but we limit ourselves with the way we've always thought, the way we've always done things, and we think that this is it. But actually, you can change the way you are. You can change your whole life, and
Yeah.
you've proven that twice.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so inspiring. Anyone who is looking to do any sort of change, any sort, or has become a bit of a victim to whatever life has thrown at them. Tomorrow, today, whenever, you could make that decision, make that choice to do something different and
Yeah.
take the first step. But a lot of people, I think it's fear, isn't it? And a lot of people are fearful of the unknown, fearful of what will happen if they do become this person. And people also hold on to stories.
Mm.
A lot of clients that I work with who are looking to change their habits will turn, it's the question is, what's keeping you doing it? What is it that's there's obviously a secondary gain. There is something, no matter how much they say, I want to change, I want to do something different. If they're not doing that, there's this secondary gain that they're thinking they're benefiting from staying still and staying where they are.
Yeah. I
And
think it's
so,
because, sorry, yeah. I
okay.
think it's because from such a young age, we get conditioned to put the power outside of ourselves, you know, put the power in the doctor's hands, or put the power in our parents' opinions, or put the power in society, what society thinks we should be doing.
Mm.
And one of my mottos in life is never believe a doctor's opinion, a doctor's diagnosis, or anybody's opinion that doesn't, um, sorry, never believe a doctor's diagnosis or someone's opinion that doesn't give you hope,
Yeah.
because without hope, we have nothing. So when the doctors told me I wouldn't heal my tumors naturally, when the doctors told me I wouldn't heal my brain injury, I was like, I'm just not listening to you. And I found different doctors, found a Chinese doctor. I can help you here. I can heal your tumors. Okay, I'm going to listen to you. With my brain injury, I found a neuroscientist. Oh, with stem cells in hyperbaric chamber, we can 100% heal your brain injury. Okay, I'm going to listen to you. So it's like choosing who you listen to and choosing who you give power to, because if you lose hope, then you have nothing.
So good. That's so good. You're right. I talk about external validation all the time and how we seek. I personally sought lots of external validation for many years, and I think a lot of us do. And we think the so-called experts know what they're talking about, but we always have the answers deep within us as well, and we get a sense as to what's right and what's not right for us. I love what you said about if it doesn't give you hope, then don't listen to it, because that completely changes everything, doesn't it? Because the number of people that hear these woe stories and these it's not going to work and this isn't going to happen and then take it as gospel, whatever you think about is going to show up anyway. So why not think about the positives? Why not stay in hope? Why not live optimistically and find the people that are going to help you do that?
Yeah, and actually, that's where, like, for example, in the brain injury, obviously at the very beginning of my brain injury, I was in so much loss, so much in, I didn't understand what was going on. I would join all these brain injury forums, and they would be so dark. And like some of these people, were, like 10 years later, not living. And I was like, I cannot listen to those stories, because if I listen to those stories and read those stories, I'm gonna get stuck in, wow, that could be me. So I just removed myself as soon as I could, and it started following only people who had fully healed themselves. And I was like, you are giving me hope right now, so you are the only person I'm going to follow and listen to.
And so when was that? When were you fully healed from your brain injury?
I mean, it did take 5 years. It took five
Yeah.
years of full dedication.
Yeah, it's a long time.
A long
And
time. And I so could have given up so many times, but I just was not willing. And oh, I'm so glad I stuck with the dedication, because it was a lot.
yeah, yeah, 5 years. And would you say that each year you could see that improvement, which is what kept you going, or what was it that kept you going?
Yeah, it was each year I could see, and it was like small things, like after a few years, I started traveling. And before, like, usually to wellness centers so I could like go deeper on my healing. And, I'd often have to arrive there. I'd have to lock myself into solitary confinement, not talk to anybody for like at least 4 or 5 days, just to recover from the flight before I could then hold a conversation. So then, like, oh, the next year, oh, it only took me 2 days to recover from a flight. Oh, the next year, oh, wow, I can fly and actually have a conversation straight afterwards. Or I can be on screen for more than an hour and a half, like you could just see these tiny little progressions, and you're just like, okay, just keep going.
Wow, it's so, so inspirational because, as you say, I think a lot of people would not or could not do what you've done and been through and come out the other side in such a beautiful way. So since then, why don't you
Hmm.
talk about what you've done since? Because I mean, your story is just incredible, and um, it really, I think, shows what is possible if you one, choose not to listen to negativity, two, think about what the alternatives that you can do. Um, you obviously talked about nourishment and fasting and the breath work. Do you still do those now, the nourishment and the fasting? Are you very
So
disciplined?
I am very disciplined. However, I do believe that actually, we need to listen to our bodies at every stage and every part of our journey. So healing my tumors was very much about being vegan, about doing a lot of fasting. Um, and actually, when I had my brain injury, I tried to implement exactly the same strategy for my brain injury. I tried being vegan, intermittent fasting, doing a lot of juicing, and it did not work. It did not work. And one of my mentors actually said to me, he was like, I think you need to add meat. And I was like, huh, okay. And then I added meat, and honestly, it was like a game changer. It was like night and day. So suddenly I was like, okay, so my brain needs something different. I thought it was just like a one size fits all healing for the body because this is what the body does, right?
Gosh, yeah.
So it was like very much learning along the way that actually you just need to stay so in tune with your body at every step of the way to listen to what it really needs. So
Mhm.
nowadays I'm not vegan. I do eat meat and fish but I do still fast 2 days a week. I love fasting. I love green juice. And I love all my biohacking. I love all my biohacking procedures. I now have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber in my living room, like ozone, everything. I love it. So I won't give it up because I know how good it makes me feel.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, incredible. And it's so interesting because again, you can get really caught up with this worked before, so it's definitely going to work again. And then you almost get a bit belligerent, don't you? A bit sort of like, I'm not going to change because I know this worked. And so to actually then have the confidence to say, no, my body needs something else.
And I really want to make a really important point here for your listeners as well, actually, because not only do we get belligerent, but we also have teachers who do. So,
Mm,
let's remember that whatever you've studied is usually what you're very focused on. So you have a mindset that is your way or the highway. So let's just
mm,
say, for example, obviously I decided not to go Western medicine because the Western medicine didn't want to serve me. But as soon as I mentioned to my doctors about hyperbaric chamber stem cells, they were like, that wouldn't work. So they had their highway. But for example, when I was dealing with my brain injury, I was still working with some of my mentors from my tumors. So they were like, you need to stay vegan. You need to stay fasting. You can't eat meat. So this is very, very important, is that to remember that even our teachers are human. Even our teachers can have certain mindsets, which is their way or the highway, whether it be Western medicine or whether it can be alternative medicine.
yeah.
So it is so important to have a well-rounded view of all of these different modalities so that you can choose what's right for you in that moment, which is why
Mm,
it's so important to get in touch with your intuition, your inner guidance. So when everyone is telling you their two pence piece of what to do, then you know what's right for you. When I added meat, my teacher at the time was just like, I can't believe you're doing this. So I could have kept my power in her hands. But luckily I didn't. Luckily I knew no.
mm,
So this is what I really teach with HypnoBreathwork as well. I really get people into their power. I really get people into knowing who they are, listening to their body, being guided by it every moment of the day. So in the end, they don't even need me. Don't listen
yeah,
to me, listen to
yeah,
you.
yeah.
I don't want you to listen to me.
It's so true. It's so true. We do. quite quickly give our power away, don't we? We do sort of think there is the guru, the expert, and actually the way the world's going, we need to become self-coaches. We need to become be very mindful of what is it that we want and know that the answers are within. So what maybe one or two tips could you give to the listener who's thinking about how do I listen to my intuition? How do I really tap into that? What
Yeah.
would you suggest?
Just start a practice, start a breathwork practice, start a meditation practice. To me, they're totally different. But really, just whatever practice you choose, if you want to do both, amazing. But whatever practice you choose, just start a daily practice, even if it's 10 minutes a day, just to start listening to yourself. What feels right in your body? Start noticing your thoughts, start noticing your energy, start noticing how you feel after different foods, how you feel after being around certain people, how you feel after talking about certain things,
Mm.
gossip, whatever, how do you feel after that? Huh, not good. Okay. How do you feel after talking about your dreams and goals and what you want to create? Amazing, So just start noticing. That's the most important thing, is just start noticing. And start noticing the breath too, because how we breathe is so related to our emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking to someone about this the other day because I really discovered breathwork probably about 6, 7 years ago when I was speaking on stages, and I was basically getting to the point I'd go on stages full of fear, and I would find that my voice would start shaking, and I'd be very conscious of it. And actually, when you hear it back, it probably wasn't as obvious as I felt it was, but I would just dread going on stage to talk about anything. And so I worked with a lady who I thought was going to help me with something completely different in terms of how to project and how to do that. And it was all about the breath because I was only breathing up to my chest, really. I wasn't breathing fully into my belly breathing, I obviously was very tense. I obviously had a lot of just it had always been the way I'd spoken. And
Yeah.
so now, I'm always breathing into belly. I'm obviously much more aware of deep breathing and taking the time to do that. But it's so powerful. And a lot of people just go around not even realizing this. It wasn't something I was aware of until we literally did sort of 6 to 8 weeks. And if I think about what was the most we focused on, it was the breath. So it's incredible.
I love that so much. I love that. Have you started mouth taping yet?
I haven't started mouth taping. No,
Oh, so this is a
no.
good one for you and your listeners. Honestly, mouth taping is a game changer.
Okay, okay.
You don't realize how at night we do usually end up breathing through our mouth, and
Yes.
being able to have a solid night's sleep with nasal breathing. Honestly, you feel so different the next
Oh
morning.
wow.
It is unbelievable. So there's the tip of the day.
Wow,
Everyone,
fantastic.
get
I will
yourself
try
some mouth
it.
tape. Get good mouth tape though, because otherwise it makes your lips really dry and can be quite painful.
I've seen quite a few people running. I run, and well, I say I run. I was quite a keen runner, but I'm getting back into it now. But quite a few people are now running with the mouth tape because they're learning how to breathe through the nose and not just breathe through the mouth. And actually, it's supposed to be amazing. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'll look into it definitely, and I think everyone who's listening should. It's so curious for it really is. So tell us what's happened since. So you were fully recovered, thank God, five
Mm.
years afterwards, after
Yes.
going through everything you went through.
Yeah.
What's happened since? How's life changed for you?
Oh, wow. Well, it's been a bit wild, to be honest, because suddenly after my vein injury, I started sharing my breath work, and that's just grown very quickly, which has been amazing, because I feel like when our soul is in alignment with our purpose, then actually things can move quite quickly. So I've been traveling around the world. I'm going to Miami next month, New Zealand the month after for tours with different amazing entrepreneurs and leaders, and so that was amazing. But I did also, unfortunately, find myself in uh, a lot of debt after my brain injury. I remortgaged my house to heal my brain.
Mm.
So that was quite stressful because obviously you're like, oh my God, I've managed to heal my brain. Now I'm in £250,000 worth of debt. What the fuck am I going to
Wow.
do with this?
Yeah.
It is not cheap to heal a brain injury at all. All the
Mm.
NHS was offering me was antidepressants, and I was obviously not willing just to accept that. So
Gosh.
when you take health into your own hands, obviously it is costly. So, I found myself in debt. But what I find, I'm always someone who thinks, okay, what is this asking of me? Whenever I find myself in hard situations, tricky situations, challenges, I'm like, what is this asking of me? So I said to the universe creator, what is this asking of me? And I turned my whole house into a biohacking center with infrared sauna, hyperbaric, ozone, red light, PEMF, lymphatic drainage, so everything. And I was like, I'm gonna Airbnb my biohacking house. And Jupe, I had wanted to leave England for so many years, but
Yeah.
obviously, once again, talking about our subconscious and our parental expectations and societal expectations, you get caught in the story of like, oh, but I'm near my friends, I'm near my family, maybe I don't want to leave, but really I did want to leave. But
Mm.
then this situation with my finances actually forced me to think differently. And
Mm.
so I put my house on Airbnb. I'm now pretty much fully booked all the time.
Wow.
And I've moved to Turkey and I'm paying off my debts with ease. Finally got out of England, living my little dream life right by the water. And yeah, just that's where life's taken me. And, through the hardships, it couldn't be any more perfect.
Amazing. Amazing. I love the fact that you've got a biohacking house that is on Airbnb. I think everyone should look it up. Yeah, so no, that's amazing because lots of people would want to experience that, wouldn't they? I mean, if you've got
Yeah.
everything you need, and it's a great experiential holiday, isn't it? So yeah. And why Turkey?
Oh, I had actually fallen in love with this area because there's a big wellness center here, and I'd fallen in love with this area.
Yeah.
And do you believe in karma?
Ish, yes.
Is so I had made the decision that I wanted to leave England, but I was obviously in a not great financial situation. And I was like, okay, I really want to leave, but I don't have the finances to put a year's rent down up front or deposit, which a lot of places were looking for in Portugal and Mallorca, which I was thinking of moving to. And then the Turkey earthquake happened. And because I love Turkey and I've made a lot of friends over here, I was like, wow, I'm going to do this online charity breathwork and raise money for the refugees. I knew they were housing refugees in this village. So I did this online charity event. And because of that online charity event, I ended up talking to someone who I would never usually talk to. And I was like, oh, I've got this money. Where can I send it to? I want it to go direct to the refugees rather than a big corporation. And she was just like, oh, by the way, Susie, I have this spare 2-bedroom apartment. It's like really reasonably priced. I don't need to put a deposit down. She was like, do you want it? I was like, yes. So I literally packed up my house in 3 weeks. I was gone. I was out of there. And it just made it so
Wow.
easy. So, we can put our desires into the universe, but we must remember that how it comes is always
Yeah.
up to the universe.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. What an amazing story. And And you'd already said I was wanting to leave, and that's the thing. It's making, again, it's a choice, isn't it? Choosing what you want, and then seeing how it can happen, and it can happen in the most bizarre way, as you've seen. So
Just need to say yes.
yeah,
You just
yeah,
need to say yes when it comes. This is
mm,
where the hypnobreathwork and the subconscious program could have come in, because I could have been like, oh well, but I wanted to do this and I had my mind set on that. And it's like, no, this is what I've asked for. Okay, it's a bit different to what I had thought, but just say yes.
yeah. Yeah, and I want to pick up on something you said earlier about the fact that we get very stuck in our ways in a way that we say, okay, family's here, friends are here, or this is the life I've had for however long,
Mm.
or my favorite restaurant's here, so I can't possibly do anything different. Someone who might be thinking, actually, I'd really like to shift something in my life, and I'm holding on to all the reasons why I can't do it. You talked about saying yes. Is it that simple, or is there anything else that someone could potentially do?
When we change our mindset, it can be that simple.
Mm.
But it's about being able to change the mindset. Like I was not happy in England. And then it was just a simple yes, let's go. And I had my mum crying, you can't leave me. I had people saying, you can't leave us. But honestly, you have to listen to where your heart wants you to go. And if your soul is not happy in a certain country, move. You're not a tree. Move.
Wonderful. You're not a tree.
And your environment is everything. It changes the energy that you're in, it changes your creativity, it changes your outlook on life. So, if there's one thing I can say to people in your audience is if they're not happy where they are, like we can put a lot of barriers in our mind. Oh, it's going to be such hard work to move house. Of course, it's going to be hard work, but will it be worth it in the end? Of course.
Yeah, it's so true. I think we get very stuck in our ways, especially I think as we get older, we think because we're getting older, we're more stuck. And actually, it's all right for the younger people or people in their 20s or whatever to do this, but we can't do this, can we? Could we? Are we allowed? And it is all about giving ourselves permission, isn't it? And saying, there's no age, it doesn't matter. If you want to do something different, do something different.
That's just societal conditioning. That's just societal conditioning telling us that we can't do things. That is not the truth. Look, we're both in our 40s. I'm in Turkey. You're in Morocco. We've made the changes. Of course, it's not of course, the truth is you can be anywhere at any age.
Yeah, exactly. 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 Well, this conversation has been so inspiring. Thank you so much for being on. And I'm curious because obviously you have a program called Thrive as well, don't you? So why don't you talk a little bit about that and how people can join?
Yeah, that's my one-on-one hypnobreathwork mentorship. And it is changing that mindset because, you know, in the brain injury community, what I realized was when people recovered from brain injury, they just called themselves brain injury survivors. And I'm like, I'm not willing to put myself in that category because I didn't just survive it. It gave me a whole new life. So for me, thriving is not just thriving in the good times, it's how can we turn even the hardest times into our liquid gold to fuel us for creating something even better. So
Mm,
this is what I take my clients through when I work with them in my Thrive program, is like really unrooting any of those limitations that are keeping them stuck in old ways of thinking, in old ways of living, in old ways of being, and helping them move into that, creating something amazing with their lives, with their relationships, all through the breath and subconscious reprogramming.
sounds amazing. So how can people get in touch with you, Susie?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram. I'm Breathe with Suzy. That's Breathe with Suzy, Suzy.
Amazing, amazing.
And
And
if they
any
go to the link in my bio, there's also 2 free breathworks in there at the moment. You can get the Magnet for Miracles, how to become a magnet for your miracles to raise your frequency. And there's also reducing stress and anxiety breathwork, which, given the state of the world right now, is often people might need that.
absolutely, absolutely, anxiety is taking over, it feels like. So yeah, that sounds amazing. So go and grab that at Breathe with Suzy. So fantastic. Any final words of wisdom you'd like to share, Suzy?
Final words of wisdom. I think it's just carve your own path, be willing to not fit in, be willing to be a rebel, be willing to carve your own path.
Love that. And yeah, give yourself permission to do it. You're allowed. I think that's all it is. We think we haven't got permission, and so, but you do. You can carve your own path. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast, and I look forward to seeing all the amazing things you're doing and keeping in touch. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me, Dupe. I've loved this conversation. You're an excellent host.
Oh, bless you. Take care. Speak soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe so you get alerted every time I drop a new episode. I'd love it if you could rate, review, and share this episode. If you would like to work with me, I offer one-to-one coaching sessions. If you're not yet ready for coaching, I also have a self-paced online course, which is a companion to my book, A Cocktail of Clarity. I will see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful week. Take care.